Hello and welcome to the second webinar in our COVID series brought to you by Malleswaram Urban Living Lab, that is MULL. This series of webinars examines the many aspects of our life that have undergone a change with the pandemic and with special reference to Malleswaram. So in today's panel, we will discuss the aspects of safety that have become very critical for us because of COVID. How do we interact? How do we use our outdoor spaces? How do we walk outside? How do we exercise outside? How do we go to the shops? How do we go to a restaurant? Do we use parks and how is it? What is the safe way to use park equipment? All sorts of public spaces are now which are open to us also present us with a whole set of challenges. And this is for us as users, citizens of this city. On the other hand, you have business owners like shops, showrooms, restaurants, small darshanis, coffee and chai places. All of them, they are being given protocols to follow and they can be penalized for non-compliance. The protocols sometimes are quite challenging and we don't even know whether the people who are given the protocols are they clear? Can they follow them? What are the challenges in following them? How can they be overcome? So these and other related issues will be explored in today's webinar. So we have once more a panel that gives you a perspective from various angles. Uh, we have with us today, uh, we're hoping to get Mr. Jaipal, the Ward 45 cooperative, who had agreed to come on the panel. So hopefully somewhere during this panel he will uh, come and join us. Uh, we have Mr. Kumar Swami, who is the owner of a very established shop on Sampagi Road, Arunodaya Apparels. Mr. Srinivas, who is the owner of South Italy's, also a restaurant on Sampagi Road. Mr. Ravi Acharya, who is a resident of Malleswaram and a Ward 45 Ward committee member. And Krishna Panyam, who's a resident and actively involved in many of the civic activities in Malleswaram. Apart from this, we will solicit your active participation in this because, as I said, we haven't taken questions, but we will be asking you to come in sometime in the middle of the panel, which Ankit will tell you about that. And you're welcome to sort of ask your questions, also put them on the chat window. So this series is being conducted by MULL, which is an initiative of Malleswaram Social, which is a community organization in Malleswaram. We are concerned with strengthening social ties in the area and also in bettering the civic amenities in Malleswaram, and Sensing Local, which is a research organization involved in environmental and public health issues and working extensively with the PBMP and various NGOs and corporates in the city. So MULL is an urban living lab, which is a platform where various stakeholders can come together to look for solutions in an open, inclusive, collaborative way. And we, with MULL, we hope to sort of achieve real changes on the ground and not just discuss ideas, but try and bring on the ground level the changes that we talk about. And on this panel, Sensing Local is represented by Ankit Bhargav, who's an urban planner, and by me, Suchitra Deep, and I'm an architect. And Dhanush will come in whenever we require any extra Kannada resources, I think. And with this, I will hand over to Ankit to take this forward.
Thank you so much, Kritika. I also just want to add that we are actually trying to debate how much of these webinars must be in English and how much in Kannada. And I think we will also pass on some kind of form to understand your perspectives. And I think Suchitra will also speak to a few of you to see that how do we balance both these languages. I also want to just place a request that at least all the panelists who are here, if you could, if you can switch on your cameras, that would be great, so that everybody knows who's here and who will be speaking. Especially the time that you're speaking, that would be great. If other time you can be on, that would be great as well. So I just want to lay out a little bit of the structure for how we're going about this today. So one is that this is actually a two-part webinar. The first part is really looking at, which we're doing today, is an information session largely, which is looking at all these conditions around public life, as Suchitra already said, that are serious things that we should be looking at right now, because the threat of COVID is still alive, and we can contract it through everything. And I mean, you can contract it even sitting at home. But a lot of the danger and the threat is actually when you go out. And as Suchitra said, when you go to eat, when you go to shop, these are things that we can't do away with. And so, what is it that we need to be doing to secure our neighborhood so that we are safe and the whole community is safe as well? Many of these are precautionary measures that we need to put in place. And something that we need to be really thinking through, what is it that we should be doing to affect behavior change at a collective level. So today's session is largely around actually the government circulars that are already around looking at this. At the same time, issues that are coming up from the ground, the pictures that have been collected. Also, we have a lot of stakeholders here who are representing restaurants, citizens. We were also having the corporator to represent his perspective. And also some case studies of tactical urbanism interventions, which is these pop-up interventions that can happen very cheaply, very affordably in places and really have a very strong impact on the ground. And if they work, then we can actually look at how to make them permanent. The second session, which is June 27th, is where we are hoping. So we are hoping that the week after this, we can actually pilot a few of these interventions on the streets and in front of restaurants and other places, and actually come back in the next webinar to discuss our progress on whether we were able to achieve it, what are the hindrances, and so on and so forth. The other sort of emphasis, which is not going to be covered here, but will be covered next time, is actually a priority focus on enhancing pedestrian infrastructure in Malleswaram. As in other places, cycling and walking is something that every single city across the globe is prioritizing. So how can we achieve this in Malleswaram, given that you all already have a long history of pushing this on the ground? But now there is enough momentum that we can actually really achieve it on ground. So I'll sort of just begin with actually the first part of this. So as you all know, like basically in our public life, there are only two main mechanisms that we have constantly come across that will keep us safe from this virus, which is here to stay. One is wearing masks out in public, and second is social distancing. And this is said not by the CDC alone, but also Anil Kumar, a BBMP commissioner, and the Karnataka Health Department. Everyone is rooting on these two things to actually come about. Otherwise, we have no way of controlling this. So the four main questions that we thought sort of need to be debated in this webinar is, what are the threats to our health when we step outside our homes? And we are hoping we can get various experiences from you all through the webinar in this. Second is, how can we safely exercise outdoors, which has also come up. Third is, what are the measures needed at crowded spots? So there are bus stops, markets, shops, darshanis are invariably places that attract crowds. So what do we need to do there? And lastly, how can safe pedestrian movement be encouraged? This is something that we will take up more thoroughly in the next one, but I just wanted to mention it here. So I'll be just showing you a little bit about the government circulars that have already come in place, which you all should know about, and a little bit of the photographs that were collected from Malleswaram. After that, we'll open it up to the stakeholders to actually represent each of their concerns, whether it's a darshini, it's a cafe, it's a citizen talking about it, the ones that we have actually spoken to represent in this webinar. And then we will open up to the larger audience here themselves to say, what are your concerns? After that, we'll move into the case studies that we've collected and a few of the opportunity. There's an opportunity as well that we see for intervention. We'll be speaking a little bit more about that. So the framework for looking at public spaces that we actually came out was that there's largely three conditions that are acting here. One is places that you're waiting in, places that you're moving through, and the spaces where we are interacting. So that's bus stops, pavements, parks, markets, and darshanis, largely. And this is a little bit like more close to what is probably true for Malleswaram. And we would be very happy to discuss also what other spaces you think in public life that we need to be considering when we are saying that we need to intervene in these places to make ourselves safe. What we've done is actually we've done a small mapping exercise to look at where are all the bus stops. There are major darshanis that we know. There are hundreds of darshanis in Malleswaram, so I'm guessing it'll take us some time to map it, but a few of them are here, the major markets and the major parks. So what you see in these dots is really the territory in which we need to really be thinking about how do we make these spaces safe as we continue to start going down to some kind of normality after this lockdown has got over. These are some of the pictures that we also collected and through this, and I just want to, I mean, what you see here is actually what you see on the streets, but what I want you to be aware of is also the kind of threats that you see in this picture, right? The kind of proximities that already have become normal, which are not okay. This is, I mean, the shot of the pavements. This is what you're seeing at the darshanis. The circles that were drawn have long disappeared, and you see nobody really caring about that much. The markets are equally busy as ever. You also see this happening at the bus stops. I mean, this is an informal bus stop, but it's also true for the formal bus stops as well. So this is, I mean, this is largely the scenario that's all over the city and not just Malleswaram. But we want to be just watchful of what would we do in these places differently, so that we don't have contact with people that are maybe asymptomatic or symptomatic in this area. So this, so now coming to actually what is happening on the government side. So on the government side, what you see is that government has to play its regulatory role. So there is a lot of penalization that has come in through already. BBMP is right now penalizing people for not wearing a mask. They are fining 200 rupees. And some, as our article later will show you, around in the last 7 days, which this notice has come out, some 2 lakh has been collected. So in a way, I mean, this seemed like a good thing that so much money has been collected. It's actually like that's not the most positive thing that we can do. What is the kind of interventions we need to put in place so that we constantly inform and remind people that we need to be wearing masks and we need to be maintaining social distance. And so in this circular by BBMP, they've actually called out the mask wearing and the 1 meter social distance that has to be maintained in regular public spaces. And this is Mr. Randeep's tweet also of I think June 10th, where they have said the same thing, and there are a couple of circulars around this as well. And the BBMP marshals are now also raising fines on people. Aside from this, there are also SOPs that have been actually sent for various kinds of places: temples, offices, restaurants. Also other kinds of public spaces themselves. And we thought that amongst the many spaces like offices and temples, that restaurants one was particularly important to us, because darshanis tend to become places that all of us visit, and this is a place that we could also do something about. I want to read a few of these points that have been actually mentioned as part of the SOP, because that it gives us a little bit of a flavor as to what's different between the circular that has said, the 2-point circular, versus a very thorough SOPs that have been built. SOPs are more or less similar all over. Whether you look at office, temple, restaurants, they're more or less similar, even hotels for that matter. So they actually ask for physical distancing of 6 feet, wearing a mask at the premises being mandatory. They ask for staggering of visitors to be done at the maximum extent possible, specific markings in the queue and seating arrangements inside the premises, prominent display of IEC material that is there. So people that you should wear a mask, you should stand at a certain distance. It's all of this makes up the IEC. That's information, education, communication material. Also, all the restaurants have to conduct thermal screening. The contactless mode of payment and digital payment, which is still not happening in many places. Tables have to be sanitized after any customer that leaves. Workers and visitors and customers have to be only allowed when they wear a mask. And lastly, the frequent cleaning and disinfection of floors, doorknobs, elevator buttons, handrails, all of this. So this is actually part of the SOP, and restaurants, hotels, all of these public spaces have to obey it. And what you see here is, I mean, I spoke about this article that, I mean, some 1,000 people have been fined. And we really want to see that this is not the way to do it. How do you do positive reinforcement? We also found a few articles which actually pointed out at the fact that darshanis and other places are struggling, even hotels. That how do you conform to this thing? What do you need to even do when these darshanis, especially, are so small? There's no space. How are we supposed to reorganize ourselves and still have business running? So actually today we also have representation from here to really talk about, like, we need to help this out. We can't just leave it on them and hope for the best. So I'll pass it on to actually Suchitra to get the stakeholders onboarded, all these multiple stakeholders that we have, and request them to share a little bit about their own perspectives in the matter. And then we'll open it up to the larger audience as well to share their own experiences as they go about shopping, traveling, all of that. Suchitra, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ankit. I think I am looking for the other two panelists. Uh, uh,
Okay.
Mr. Kumaraswamy, is he online? And Mr. Srinivas. I think they've been having some connection problems.
Can we start with whoever's here?
Yeah, otherwise we'll start with Krishna.
Yeah, and then we could open up to the public, to the audience at large, if other people are having problems, or we could bring them in if that's possible as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I was interested in finding out was other day, I think it was Thursday. It was supposed to be a mask day, and I was hoping that the BBMP and the state government would just sort of at least flood the market with masks, and then I would go around and see everyone wearing masks. But I didn't see absolutely any difference. Some of those pictures that you showed were that I took in Sampige Road and 8th Cross markets and so on. There was just no difference. So I think we are not still serious about this because, as you said, it's a bit like helmets. We can penalize people into wearing it, but it'll work much better if people understand and wear masks on their own. Because I mean, even the 50% of people who are wearing masks in the market, they are not wearing them properly. They are leaving their noses out, or sometimes it's just hanging below the chin. So I think somehow the awareness is still not there after whatever 3 months of lockdown and so on. So I think we need to focus on that.
Right, absolutely.
I would request Ravi also to come in and speak from the perspective of senior citizen and from the ward committee, if something can be done. Ravi, you need to unmute. Yeah. Need to unmute and then.
I think after that we can have Dhanush as well to represent his perspective, being a person who runs a restaurant.
Yeah, my major concern was the use of the pedestrian spaces. See, I happen to be a senior citizen, and walking in Malleswaram is a nightmare because the pavements have been taken over either by these small eateries which use the pavement as their eating space, or by shops who display their wares on the road, or the street vendors who are taking over, for example, on 8th Cross. The two places I would like to talk about is 8th Cross and 8th Main, between 17th and 18th Cross. Walking down 8th Cross from Margosa Road to Sampige Road for a senior citizen is like committing suicide. There's no place for us to walk. The pedestrian spaces have been taken over by street vendors, and you literally have to walk in the middle of the road. And in 8th Main, we have these small eateries who use the pedestrian spaces as their eating places. They go inside, buy their food, come outside, stand. There is no social distancing. There's no mask wearing, obviously, because they're eating. And in one place, he has a sink outside his eatery where people wash their mouths and spit. and he's defiant about it because he doesn't seem to care that he's a health hazard. These are issues which have to be addressed. It's all fine to have SOPs and people like marshals and HIs to fine. For the entire Ward 45, you have 3 persons who are authorized to fine, apart from the police. That is the marshal, the health inspector, and the junior health inspector. And apart from the marshal whose job is mainly to do this, the health inspector and the junior health inspector have their own other responsibilities, so they really cannot be spending time going around fining people. The junior health inspector is in charge of getting all the garbage things being done properly, so she hardly has any time to do this kind of thing. The health inspector is most of the time occupied in checking whether a quarantine is being done or going to the migrant transit point at Palace Ground to check on people who are moving out of Bangalore. So what's the answer? I mean, how do we reclaim our pedestrian spaces? We did do a footpath breakout campaign some couple of years back, and everybody wants the footpaths back, but nobody's ready to do anything about it. We built a footpath in Malleswaram in 18th Cross, and it stopped there because thanks to COVID, no further work took place. So my question is, how do we reclaim these spaces? Because as a senior citizen and as an old resident of Malleswaram, I've lived here for almost practically my entire life, and I've been in Bangalore, that is. Malleswaram has been my place of stay. We used to love walking in Malleswaram. Today I dread it. I just can't think of walking in Malleswaram. You come road by road, street by street, payment by payment have been taken over, either for parking or for running a shop or anything you want. Name it, they have it. Construction materials, you name it. So how do we reclaim these spaces? It's all easy to say there's an SOP, but does the SOP really work? Whether it's a darshini or a shop or anything. I know friends of mine who run shops, I've talked to them. It's not very easy to run a shop on those SOPs. So let's get real and see what can we do about it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ravi. I think so. The idea which Suchitra was saying is that the idea is not to leave it here, but actually to move into negotiating of these realities and intervening in it in the week forward. So I think this is something that has to be tried on ground, and there's no other way actually to do it. Suchitra, over to you. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just trying to get Mr. Kumaraswamy to, I mean, I think he has some problems with his connection. But anybody from the audience, I think Rekha is here, Rekha Chari. If you have any questions, please do ask Rekha. Unmute yourself, Rekha. And
Yeah. Hi, I'm Rekha from I live on 8 Cross, Malleswaram. I've been I've tried not to go out too much except for my evening walks within our ward itself. I feel safe walking only within the ward because I know I get all those reports every day and I know what is where. So I don't like to venture out outside of the ward and feel unsafe. But just the other day, for the first time, we thought we'll just go to Sankey, venture out to Sankey. I was very disappointed because there's just a small sticker at the gate which says masks are compulsory. And there's nobody to check. There was no security guy at the gate. And when we went in, there were people without masks, people who have dropped their masks down, wearing them like necklaces. I really felt very, very unsafe walking within Sankey. And this is a very, very sad state of affairs, I would say. And it's a ticking bomb because we don't know from where all people are coming, what all zones they are coming. So, and the other thing you're talking about SOPs. Yes, I've been going through these SOPs. There are SOPs for parks, for restaurants, temples, everything. But what I feel is these SOPs are very, very descriptive. And people, even if you put it up on the notice board of Sankey, nobody will have the patience to stand there and read what it is. So my suggestion is, I've spoken to the Ward 65 corporator also, but no action has been taken. I've told him, make posters. When you say don't spit in public, don't urinate in public, this is the fine. you need to blow up posters and put them all over and saying this is a situation at this time and it's dangerous. We need to get people to keep seeing this day in and day out for it to sink into them. People are really not scared yet. I mean, and by doing this, they are putting other lives at risk also.
Yeah.
So I feel it's something that people should realize, and the authorities, like how Ravi was saying, nobody seems to be bothered, whether it's the health inspector, junior health inspector, senior health inspector. I don't think none of them even realize what their role in this COVID situation is. So we really don't know whom to approach where in the BBLP. Uh, and our goal is either the MLA office or our board corporator, who sometimes picks up the phone, sometimes doesn't pick up the phone. So it's actually a rather scary situation since it's spreading very fast in the south. And Malleswaram, luckily, we are still lucky not to have containment zones within Ward 65 or whatever, So I think we should get a little more alert. And the other thing was about shops. I went the other day for an essential shopping to Jockey at 7th Cross. I think all of you all know where that is. They're happy. I know those people because I've been going there for a long time. There happens to be a senior lady, a senior citizen lady sitting at the counter. She's sitting there without a mask. And they have their house just behind. So they brought a small, less than 1-year-old baby, making the baby sit on the counter, feeding it over there. So I literally went and told them, this is not the place for the baby. Please take the baby back. And I told that lady, I said, you being a senior citizen shouldn't be sitting here, first of all. And you are sitting here without a mask, which is even more dangerous. You don't know where all people are coming from. And it's such a small shop. There were about 7-8 people crowded in the shop, and the door was closed. I made them open the door. So I think I really still feel very unsafe going out and doing anything in this situation. So I don't know. I think all of us together should take a call on whom we should approach, what we should do to make things safer for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rekha. Very
I would like to
important
intervene here
inputs.
for a minute. I didn't say
Yeah.
that our health inspectors didn't know what to do. They know what is to be done, but they are overstretched. And the demand that being placed on them by the insensitivity of the citizens. It is not just the shopkeepers, the citizens. Like Krishna said a few minutes back, when we went for a walk on Thursday to the mask thing, the problem was not with mask. Everybody had a mask on them, but some had it below their chin, some had it below their nose, and some didn't have it at all. And the important point here is that I don't know whether Krishna mentioned it, but we noticed what Krishna and others, I think Suchitra was also there, we noticed this. The shopkeepers who are interacting with the number of individuals are not wearing masks, and they should be wearing masks. It's very important that they wear, because they are the ones who are.
Yeah.
And
I think we have.
Yeah, that's it. Okay,
Sorry.
that was my intervention. Sorry.
I think we have at this point the owner of Arunodaya barrels. I don't know which one of these windows belongs to. I call this as him, Mr. Kumar Swami.
Come on the stage.
Request.
He's not there.
Okay. There's a question from our chat window is open. Somebody or Subhashini has a question. You can ask the question by unmuting yourself, ma'am. This Subhashini. You can unmute yourself and ask the question if you have a question, or you can type it in the chat window.
Muted from see. Yeah, maybe you can unmute. Yeah.
Okay. I think I'd request everybody to place their microphones on mute, and only the people who have a question to ask to unmute themselves, please.
Okay.
I think we.
Maybe we can just take it towards the end, if because
Yeah,
I
okay,
can't.
sure. Let's move on and then we'll come back again. We have another set of questions that we can take at the end.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to address Aparna, your point, I completely agree. We all know what the problem is, and it's really about how do you build interventions forward. And I think this is what the next part of this is. The slideshow is that there is actually funds allocated, and I will just speak about that as well at the ward level for us to be doing interventions. And we also were looking at various interventions across both India and the world that might be easy to replicate, and also just guidelines for us to just look at, okay, let's get this kind of a signage here, or let's get that kind of a signage here. So I'll just get into that as well. um, so we actually looked at each of these spaces that we had identified earlier and tried to look at comparative interventions that may have occurred for some place we know or in other parts of the world. So we found actually two images of market spaces where actually these vendors have been segregated in a very logical fashion so as to retain the social distancing. And also these circles have been drawn to keep the customers at social distance as well. And these are again drawn in chalk, but the idea was to look at these scale based interventions, not like one shop, but actually look at probably intervention that can happen over a street. And even though right now what you see is in largely chalk based, tomorrow the same thing could be drawn in hot paint on the road and it will stay for years to come. So this is a few images that we thought that, you know, if people want to see there's something for us to learn from here, how they're organized. Um, Also, we saw that on pavements themselves, I mean, Malleswaram pavements, not all the places are very wide, but even segregating direction flows are important, especially there's walking areas inside a park, and whether just drawing of a simple line and these arrows can actually segregate movement patterns in a very safe way. Um, Also, like simple things like this, like just markings on the floor or at the shop, like right at the beginning of the shop, if we can request everybody to just put up a big notice there, put up these notices at the queues for billing or at the places that they're shopping. So the idea of this is not, these are very simplistic things, but the idea is that I can point at that and show it to let's say, show it to a shopkeeper to say, you know what, get this kind of a thing done. Or we can actually look at how we need to be putting up these signs in certain public spaces. This is a case of actually a bus stop on the left, where they have actually drawn also stuff on the floor because bus stops invariably tend to be overcrowded. So just design intervention that will be people constantly aware. Also just seatings like closing off certain kinds of benches, which is very simple. Are at least the formal bus stops where there's a proper shelter, you could totally cordon off certain seats so that no one's sitting there. Right now, none of this is done actually. So these are very just like all of these are just simple interventions, but I think they're very doable. And if you keep repeating them across the neighborhood, I'm sure if you bombard people with messages 5, 6 times, like there'll be some kind of memory that will be built up collectively. The other two things that we want to point out is that everyone is aware of the fact that we are in danger of contracting the virus in the public spaces. So the center has actually released a circular. The Ministry of Housing had actually said that minimum of 3 markets in big cities like Bangalore, which is over 1 million, need to be pedestrianized. And this is minimum, not maximum. And they have actually got a very thorough circular of suggestions what need to be there. And they recognize the fact that the lockdown being relaxed, the need for social distancing has to be there. And pedestrianization of these markets is a very important aspect to be looked into. They've also got timelines with regard to putting in temporary measures by September, formal plans by end of September, and also implementation of these plans by November. And they have largely talked about, I've pulled out some key points that are of interest here. One, that market spaces need to be rearranged with quick and temporary measures, that is barricades, road closures for vehicles, and other temporary measures that need to be there for social distancing. Secondly, this idea of this on-street parking or carriageway that can also be repurposed for extending the pavements for walking as well. Now, this is a classic thing in Malleswaram case also, where the pavements are just disappearing. So we can actually, as part of this, especially in areas near leading to markets and other places, this circular gives us that kind of a leader that we can increase pedestrian space. They've also talked about dedicated spaces for cycling, and this is really up to the neighborhood whether that kind of demand also exists. And the fourth thing that they have actually talked about is making sure that while we intervene, we are retaining green spaces, but also you can add further green spaces in order to incentivize walking. Also have clear spaces for vending, waste collection, and toilet access. So this circular is an instrument that is up for us to use and take up. Also with the city itself, that okay, we can actually nominate a street in Malleswaram and that can be then taken up. I think Suchitra, you had mentioned 8th Cross as something that can be taken up, right? If I'm not wrong. Okay. Aside from this, as per the recent circular that you see on the right hand side, BBMP, actually every ward has 20 lakhs that has been allocated for COVID related interventions. So I think we are constantly talking in the messages and also through the group, as Mr. Ravi also said, that we need to intervene, and Aparna also said we need to intervene. Here is the second instrument that you need. There is money. We need to be asking for the ward disaster management cells to be set up, because you need the disaster management cell to approve the measures that we put in place, and you can move the funding to actually support this. And all of the signage, public signages that need to be put in place, or extended pavement areas, or pavement areas that need to be extended, all of these interventions are very much in the scope of what can be done here. It's really about us moving through the channels to make this happen. And this is something that is high priority for us and not simply talking about it as well. Yeah, I think I'll leave it here at this point, and over to you, Suchitra.
Yeah, thanks, Ankit. I think we are again challenged by our network connections on two people who are trying to connect the panelists. One would be from a restaurant and the other showroom person. So whenever they come in, we'll bring them in. But I I happened to speak to the owner of one restaurant on 8th Main, and he was clear on a couple of issues. One, he said he didn't really know what were the SOPs that he had to follow. He didn't have clarity about them. This is, I think, a common problem because a lot of people there's so many procedures and protocols which are being put in place, and whether it's clear to people or not, I think there is a big gap. Secondly, even if they understood, would they be able to implement it? And you can see practically, because of the way that we are, situated in the sense of our population, and our roads are small. We tend to occupy each other's spaces quite a bit. On a practical level, they are finding quite a few challenges in trying to implement this. So these are going to be issues that I think we have to start addressing. And the reason that we felt that we need to bring this across is that money has been allocated to ensure that these things happen, that the BBMP is able to make sure that we stay safe in the community. But it's up to us, as we see, it's up to each one of us to ensure this happens by being active on the ground. What do you say, Ankit?
Absolutely. And I think what you're bringing out is actually you spoke with one of the cafe owners as well, right? And they were talking about that. How do we execute? We don't even know how to execute. They're not architects. So also the appeal as part of this webinar is that we definitely want to work with the residents of this area who feel concerned for this area. Let's go out and actually help these people put up, if it's interior spaces, we need to help them execute the SOP in certain cases. And if it is these public areas, we need to fight for it. So we at priority, we need to actually help set up the ward disaster. We need to ask the corporators set up the ward disaster management cell, because only through that can we identify this 20 lakhs and actually allocate it to certain things. The disaster management cell, if you read the circular, actually is the only person that can approve it. And so it is really up to us to say, okay, can we get like 20, 25 people from this webinar and over the week to actually go out and help a few shops and help a few other places actually change their organization to make them safe. We document that, bring that back, and let that sort of, we help each other set up the SOPs, implement the SOPs within the areas, and also like work with the ward committee and the corporator to actually um, pedestrianize certain market areas or extend the pavement in certain areas or put up signage regularly in all these public spaces so that this is really something that can be done through the kind of instruments that we have.
I think we again open this up now to the audience to have, if they have any questions, suggestions,
No, I want
please unmute yourself and then you can speak.
Yeah, Ravi here. You're talking about 20 lakhs with the ward committee allotting it. Yes, might be able to get him to allot. But I do not want to name the eateries. There are 3 or 4 eateries right in my neighborhood, which are hole in the wall eateries. They sell food. The customers buy the food, come and stand on the pavement and eat. Now, no amount of social distancing is going to happen there. These are eateries which have been there for years. Some of them have been there for decades. Some have come up recently. And when I did ask one of them, as why can't you control the people standing? This was before the COVID time. When I did ask one of them, why can't you control the people who are standing on the pavement? His answer was, the pavement belongs to everybody. If they go and stand there, it's not my problem. So how do you solve this? The problem is not of money. The problem is not of money. The problem is not of SOPs. The problem is that of changing the mindset of people. In Bangalore, it's a great thing to go and stand. I have done it in my younger days, and it's still. I used to do it till COVID. We few of friends get together, go stand outside one of these eateries, pick up a cup of coffee, and stand there and talk. But we used to ensure at least that we don't come in the way of others. But that is not the case. It's now become increasingly difficult for anybody to control this, because Suchitra was with me when we walked on 8th May, and we saw the reactions we got from the shopkeepers and the eatery owners when we told them about this. There's there's a lack of, what do you call it? There's a mindset problem. How do you change it? Nobody thinks twice about standing on the pavement, eating, talking with hardly any social distancing. I think it's just not the SOPs or the 20 lakhs which thing. It's how do we change the mindset of citizens that they have to wear the mask, that they have to maintain social distancing, that they should not spit on the roads. You showed a beautiful photograph of a bus stop. I don't know where. It's probably from some Western country, because in India I have not seen a bus stop like that, where you can have social distancing like that. Sorry, pal, it doesn't work. You walk on Malleswaram Margosa Road, you look at the bus stop, there's no bus stop. There's just one thing, signage hanging that says this is a 18th bus stop. And people are all crowded around there. You go outside Malleswaram 13th Market, now that the colleges are not there, it's fine. But when the college is there, all the students of the Malleswaram Ladies Association are standing outside the market, occupying half the road, waiting for a bus. So let's get real about it. How do we solve these problems?
So there are 2 things that I would like to mention. One is creating templates that can be followed over and over again. So even if the bus stops are in an open public space, can we create a template which can be actually put on the floor, and all the bus stops are marked, social distancing places are marked, and we put up signage to do that. So there's some things we can do. The second thing is there is actually a fining system for shops, restaurants, and other places that is going to come up within the next few days. So they are going to be fined for not doing social distancing. So the idea of reporting and fining is also part of BBMP's mandate and the health inspector and the marshals. So I think there is a carrot and stick principle that also has to be applied here again, where invariably these guys are going to be fined. They will have to cough up money if they don't follow protocol. Like the people are anyway paying 200 rupees for not wearing a mask. So I think a little bit of that is going to kick in. So how do we implement? So for me, the standard templates are a great way of actually going about implementing similar kind of messaging all across. while you also work with the ward committee and other BBMP people to actually look at reporting mechanisms also to stop this from happening.
There's a
Suchitra.
question in the chat window. It's COVID has made us realize the importance of hygiene in public space places, COVID or no COVID. Can removable and safe partitions with social distancing in public spaces be possible? An additional element to the existing built spaces. Uh, this is a really good suggestion, and this has also been implemented in actually one of the slides. If you can go back to that restaurant in Thailand that you had shown earlier, Ankit. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to pay attention to that.
Oh, it doesn't seem to be here. Aishwarya, is it here?
Yeah.
Don't see.
So these are very simple things that you can put in. Somebody sent me in Vidyarthi Bhavan. I think they put a plastic barrier between one person and the other. You can also cross off seats. Make them unusable so that the distancing is made possible. So there are a lot of small, cheap, and easily affected changes which can be brought into place. They don't require a huge budget or anything like that. So it is possible. That's to answer your question. And we will be actually looking at those kind of uh, interventions in the coming few weeks. So this webinar is just a way to sort of bring uh, about the issues which people are facing. And what we want to do is actually take it on the ground and involve all of you in that process. So there's
If
another
I
question.
can, if we can come in for a
Yeah.
second. See, one
Yes.
of the problems is that these guidelines, etc., assume certain things. I mean, they may work nicely for restaurants in MG Road or somewhere else, but none of them can apply to a darshini. I mean, if you can think of any of the darshinis, the whole width of the restaurant would be 2 meters. So there's no way physical distancing is going to be possible. So either we admit the reality that this is the reality. 90% of restaurants are like this in Malleswaram. I think I can only think of 3 places where you can actually sit down, which you can call a restaurant in Malleswaram. So either we come up with realistic guidelines that apply to our real world, right?
Yeah.
We are very good at coming up with these nice, beautiful documents. The other day, somebody posted something from the government of India, and someone pointed out. I mean, it is a beautiful poster, but the one of the items mentioned was in Fahrenheit. So it's clearly we are just taking stuff that is out there and we're just pushing it off and saying that okay, this is the right thing to do. But they're not practical for any of us. So I would come down from that 30,000 feet view and come down to the ground and let's just start with masks. I don't think the social distancing in restaurants. I mean, we don't have restaurants in Malleswaram. We have maybe 2 restaurants. Rest of them are all darshanis, and in fact, even more than darshanis, most people stand on the road and eat, as Ravi is pointing. I mean, not even the restaurants where you buy and come out and eat. The restaurant is on the footpath. So now, I mean, who is going to implement physical distancing there? I don't know. But I think we should sort of start with masks first and just awareness, because I think if people are not worried about their own life, I mean, how much enforcement or design that you're going to do? I mean, we have to first make people aware that this is a disease that is not, very forgiving. You can just be lax about it, but sooner or later it's going to come back and hurt you. So, and we are seeing, for example, in Bangalore, if you have read the details, that I mean, now we are getting a lot more cases which are not from outside. We are getting a lot of cases which are so-called ILI and SARI. That is that their contact is not very clear where they got the disease from. So that means that we are now there is community transmission, which the government keeps denying. Which means that when you go out, there are people out there who have not been identified, who are not in quarantine, who are out there who are transmitting the disease. So we have to. I think the only thing right now I think that makes sense is awareness, awareness, and awareness.
Completely agree on that, Krishna. There's one suggestion from Srilata, which also I think makes sense. Maybe that's the way to go for at least a while. She says strictly only takeaway must be implemented. Can hole in the wall eateries be mandated to put up a poster in front of their eateries, educating the customers? Fine people otherwise. So
See,
maybe
they're going
where
to take
it's
it away
not
and eat it
possible.
right there. So
Oh,
the
can I
No, no,
customer
intervene?
will
so
take it away and eat it right there. So see, the thing is that people have to be educated. A shop owner can only do so much. We have to educate the shop owners as well. But if the customer doesn't care about, I mean, they don't seem to understand. People don't seem to understand. I mean, I would take the example of the street vendors who are sitting along, I mean, 8th Cross, Ampike Road corner, right? They're sitting like within 2 feet of each other. They're just in touching distance of each other, and they're sitting all day, and they're talking to hundreds of people. And I mean, I just worry that these people who haven't had a income for last 3 months, and now now they're putting themselves in harm's way, and I guess no one is telling them what the risk is, right? Because at a minimum, they should be wearing masks. I mean, I would say the least thing is forget about what kind of mask, etc. Right? But they should wear a mask and maybe change it once in a while. I know that masks are difficult, etc. But that is the simplest and that's the only practical solution we have. Social distancing is great if you have if you're we have like a nice restaurant where you have lots of space and tables and so on, but majority of things that we are talking about, darshini, street vendors, the so-called Chinese food vendors, there is no social distancing possible. But at least let's start with what is practical, which is masks, and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
doable.
completely agree, Krishna. I think we have to have a huge awareness
Can
program.
I?
I think I'd like to bring in somebody, Subhashini, who's trying to, I think, connect and ask a question. And I'm not able to. I think she's unable to. If she's able to come in, I'd like her to please unmute herself. We are kind of running out of time, so I'd like to, say that if anybody else who hasn't spoken, if they'd like to come in and make their point, and then we can come back to those who have spoken towards the end. So
No,
we give everybody a
there's
We have
chance.
Dhanush,
one point I
because
would
Dhanush
make.
is running a restaurant, at least,
One point I
even if
would
it's
like to
part of
make here.
Malleswaram Social.
Uh, no, to take off from what Krishna said, I would like to make one point. I think the solutions have to be local solutions. Let's not take something from somewhere else and say that we want the solution that's going to apply to Bangalore or to Malleswaram. We need to come up solutions which are from Malleswaram, which can be done in
Yeah,
Malleswaram.
right.
These
So
eateries
Rekha
talk about
has.
social. So yeah. Anyway, that's.
So yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we are getting protocols from outside, but we have to customize, and that's the whole point of MULL is to try and make sure that we get
No,
what we
no.
want within Malleswaram. So
I'm not
Rekha
talking
has
of.
a point which says,
Let me not finish. I'm not talking of customizing protocols from other places. I'm talking of creating protocols from our experience here in
right,
Malleswaram. You go
right,
down 8 floors, you really think social distancing is going to happen there?
yeah,
Let's get real.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, sure. I know there's a big mismatch. I'm just going to say what Rekha is saying. She says maybe promote mask days every week, make handheld posters and walk through the streets. Definitely a lot of awareness which has to be created. So the point that I want to make is it's quite clear that the situation on the ground is grossly at variance at what it should be. And we have a lot more, very different challenges from other places. And the only way that we're going to be able to make things happen is if we all get together and figure out the ways that we're going to deal with it and disseminate. If it's just a few people talking, or if it's just BBMP coming in with some protocols and trying to penalize people, I don't think that's the way to go. So the idea is to try and make this as broad-based as possible. So we will be continuing to, take up this topic to in the next week also, and in the week that follows, we will be taking up a campaign on the ground. We'll be doing some action on the ground, and I think Ankit can take us through that.
Yeah, so I mean, I completely agree with everything that you all had to say. Of course, we need our local interventions, and we don't need protocols that are borrowed. We need to respond to our own realities. I completely agree. There's no way I can disagree with that. But this is up to us to figure out how to translate it. So what I would also request is that I'm going to create a volunteer tab right away on our website. If we can, a couple of us can come together and actually through the week work with a few of these restaurant shops, even the public to some extent, to say what is it that we can do. And also, like, just, I mean, awareness at a certain level. If you go around with a board and let's say you do a march, it's ephemeral, it disappears. You need infrastructure to keep reminding you. So you need signages to keep being there week after week, reminding you that there's something to be done. So I think at certain levels we need to also balance out very active kind of awareness that we need to be doing. That's talking to people, doing marches, all of that, but also putting in infrastructure that's here to stay, to change behavior and inform people every day. So what I would also recommend is that after this, if some of us can come together and over the week figure out how to implement these and translate this on ground, this is really something that's the need of the hour. I think we have one or two more questions that have just come up. Priya, who's talking about token systems can be used in most places. People can wait in their turns. That's true, actually. I mean, there are cases that we've seen some signage on the floor where people are actually queuing up at a distance, and everyone is not crowding around shops like that. So all of these ideas are actually great. We should list them, bring them together, work with people on the ground to actually implement some of these things. And also, we need the ward disaster management committee to be set up. We cannot afford for that to not be set up. Okay. Suchita, is there a couple of more questions I think that you would like to take?
Yeah, if anybody has a question, they can come in at this point. But there's an observation from Subhashini that the shop owners do not wear masks. That's very true. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I think Krishna has been hammering away at the point that we should get everybody to wear masks. So I think we need a huge mask awareness campaign, which is yet not in. I mean, it's not that awareness is just not there.
Is Dhanush around?
Dhanush is.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
He's around as a restaurant owner. We can ask him how practical are those SOPs which have been. He's running a restaurant, so let's ask him that.
Yeah. Dhanush, would you like to come in and give your inputs about what challenges you have been facing?
Yeah. Okay, I was not prepared for this, but yes.
It's okay.
Sorry. So as restaurants, it's been as with any other business, it's been very difficult to even like implement any of the SOPs, like any of like social distancing. If so, basically the problem with us is if we get affected as a business, the number of people we will be infecting large. Because we will be the center of activity for a lot of public. So we have to be much more responsible than the general public when we are dealing with something like COVID. So because of all this, on a personal, on an individual level, we took a call to not start dine-ins because sanitization, keeping everything cleaned, all that seemed extremely impossible. Though on paper we could checkmark a lot of things that are mentioned in the SOP, but we knew that we would not be able to do it 100%, and even 1% has like of spreading infection is really can impact a lot. So there are a lot of practicality issues that we are facing. So we are in big confusion as to what whether to even go ahead, continue running the restaurant or wrap up and then go ahead. So that's the kind of confusion we are in.
Right. So I mean that's a Dhanush represents I think the dilemma of every small restaurant owner. Even the large restaurants have a different set of problems, but the small restaurants have uh, critical issues because they are running on probably much smaller margins, and then every person lost is tells on their bottom line. I have there's one more suggestion from Rekha saying that we should open 8 Cross Traders Association to help implement safe shopping. That's a good idea. We really do need to do that. Anybody else has some either questions or suggestions at this point? People who haven't spoken earlier would like to say something before we wrap up. Okay. Ankit, shall we wrap up now or
Yeah, we can wrap up.
yeah?
I just want to say that within the next hour, we will be creating the volunteer tab on the MULL website. So, whoever of you who would like to join us over the next week to actually implement some of these things and translate it on ground, that would be great.
Yeah. So thank you so much to whoever participated in this webinar. Unfortunately, some of the challenges that we face thanks to the internet connectivity has prevented our two or three of our panelists. Mr. Jaipal is actually traveling and maybe he's coming back. We've been trying to reach him, and he had agreed to be part of the panel. So I think there is some problem there, and the same goes for the other two people. But I think we had Dhanush's input to represent at least from the hotelier's perspective. What we'd like to say is that please. So the whole point of MULL is not to talk, it is to do things on the ground. And what we want to do in the next week is to have those of you who are interested and other people whom you feel would be interested in sort of doing something on the ground to please volunteer. And we will look at the simple measures that really need to be rolled out. For example, creating an awareness campaign for usage of masks. Looking at what are the real problems that maybe street vendors have and trying to see what is practically possible on the ground, really marking out maybe with paint, with tape, trying to put maybe planters. All these are very, very simple things to do, and it just needs the involvement, active involvement of as many citizens as possible. So do sign up for to volunteer for this. Do spread the word so that we can get this rolling. Uh, Please give us your feedback and tell us what you feel we should be doing in the future webinars. And check our website because all the learnings and the resources that are connected to our webinars will be put on our website. So, for example, we just showed you for the COVID awareness what all is on our website. Similarly, we'll do the same thing for this one also, right? Ankit, we'll be putting the
Yes, we will be doing that. We'll hope to bring the corporator and other board committee members also for the next one. We will try make a attempt to do that because otherwise it will not be able to move forward in the constructive.
Yeah. So this is a new initiative. There will be teething issues of this sort, I think. But I think the main thing is that as many people get involved in this, the more successful we can be. So actually, we need more and more people joining us in trying to take this forward. Any final comments from you, Ankit?
No, I think that's fine. Sophia, any comments from you? Dhanush, any comments? No. Okay, we
No,
can.
I think
Yeah.
Ravi and Krishna?
No, I think we need to act now. I guess I mean, it's been I mean, COVID has been around for 3-4 months now, and we still don't have any awareness in the general public. And it's whatever we need to do, we need to do now.
Yeah.
Right. Ravi?
Yeah, I endorse what Chris is saying. You need to get feet on the ground, and you know how difficult it is to get feet on the ground to spread the message. I have my limitations now because I can't enter crowded spaces. So and that's one thing that I have. I can't enter limited crowded spaces. So you need to get. I don't know. This is going to be difficult. I think it's a long battle. That's all I can say. Like
Yeah.
it's now
But I
what
think
50 years since helmets were introduced in this country. We are still trying to make people wear helmets. So it's like that.
So all those who have stayed right till the end, I think most sort of strongest cheerleaders. You're the people who have to sort of sign up and help us move this forward. So we hope to hear from you and have your continued support for the upcoming webinars also. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in the coming week. I hope not Saturday, but before that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.